Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are for educative purpose only. They will be very useful to you in your everyday practice. Plus, also it will be useful to you in your exams, oral exams, as well as theory exams. Mainly for fourth year student. Some of the topics may be useful for even first year, second year, and third year students. If you like this video, please press button like and subscribe and share with your friends. Yes, today we are going to do the another part of body temperature regulation. That is when your body temperature becomes very low. We use a term called hypothermia. So today we are going to discuss regarding hypothermia. We don't come across very frequently here, but the person who are staying close to the area where the external environment is tremendously low, say like in Kashmir or say Simla, etc. You will be exposed to an extreme cold, or there may be a cold wave which can lead to a condition called as a hypothermia. Once in a while person can be accidentally immersed in a cold water and can also end up with hypothermia. We'll be dealing with all those aspects, going through little highlights. That is approach to hypothermia. We'll be discussing under the same heading like definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment and complications. Now what exactly do you mean by hypothermia? When your body temperature, or we call core body temperature, drops below 95 degree Fahrenheit, we call that as a hypothermia. Here we are using Fahrenheit, that's why we are mentioning 95 degree Fahrenheit. But if you mention in a centigrade, it will be less than 35. So if your body temperature drops below 35 degrees centigrade or 95 degree Fahrenheit, you will call that as hypothermia. Now there are two basic groups. One we call accidental, which we also use the word unintentional. Means person is not willing for, but when he is exposed to extreme cold atmosphere, there is a drop in body temperature. While intentional means there is a controlled cooling of a body temperature for specific medical conditions or for treatment purpose or during surgery, etc. Like a person who is undergoing a major cardiovascular surgery, or in a person with acute MI, or person with traumatic brain injury, etc. Or a person is doing a major surgery on a brain which is lasting for a long period. In all those conditions, you induce hypothermia. That we mention as intentional hypothermia. Already we have mentioned that hypothermia means when your body temperature falls below 35 degrees centigrade or 95 degree Fahrenheit. Good number of time it will end up with medical emergency where you might require to give even a cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You can classify according to the severity, mild, moderate and severe. You can classify according to etiology, we call as a primary and secondary. You can classify according to unintentional or accidental. Both mean same. Or we call intentional or induced hypothermia. Depending upon the type of exposure, non-freezing cold injury, which can be labeled as trench foot or chill blends, and freezing cold injury will end up with frost nip or frostbite. These are the terms which are being utilized. They can ask you in oral, and sometime you can be asked some short notes on any one of this hypothermic terminology. So by definition, we have already mentioned when the body temperature falls below 35 degrees centigrade or 95 degree Fahrenheit, we label that as hypothermia. As far as mild, moderate and severe is concerned, mild means between 32 to 35 or between 95 to 89.6 degree Fahrenheit. Moderate means if your body temperature falls between 28 to 32 or in Fahrenheit 89 to 86, lowest is 86. And severe means less than 86 or less than 28 degrees centigrade. So these are the terminology which can be for mild, moderate and severe. In India, we normally utilize what we call as Fahrenheit. Less than 95 we call as a hypothermia. Between 95 to 89.6 we call mild. Between 86 to 89 we call that as a moderate. And less than 86 we call as a severe. Roughly we say that 95, 90, 86, less than 86. As far as primary hypothermia is concerned, in primary the thermoregulatory center is normal and person is exposed to extreme cold, while in secondary there is abnormal thermoregulatory center. Say as for example in case of a person with sepsis, person with head injury, hypothyroidism, etc. We'll be dealing in detail as we go further. So indirectly secondary is always secondary to some other pathophysiology which produces imbalance in thermogenesis or there is an abnormal thermogenesis, while in primary your body regulatory mechanism is normal but you are exposed to extreme cold, and that is labeled as primary. By and large, majority of the time it is accidental or we call unintentional, while intentional is usually in a treatment of some conditions. This intentional is usually in some medical conditions like surgery to prevent a brain damage. So accidental we already mentioned, mild, moderate and severe. We have said that less than 95, between 95 to 89, between 82 to 89 is moderate and less than 82 is considered as severe. We have already mentioned here. These are the different figures, and with a traumatic injury the figure will change. That is in mild hypothermia of trauma 93 to 97, moderate is between 90 to 93 and less than 90 is considered as severe. This is International Commission for Mountain. If they have put into different stages, that is 1 to 5. Stage 1, person is conscious with little shivering, where the temperature is between 95 to 89.6. Usually with this called as mild variety. Hypothermia stage 2 is impaired consciousness without shivering, which is between 89 to 82. Person becomes unconscious, that is between 82 to 75. This is called stage 3. Stage 4, nearly close to death, that is we call apparent death. Circulation is absent. Here in unconscious circulation is present. And when the temperature falls below 75, usually person will enter into stage 5, 4 and 5. So less than 56 degree Fahrenheit, person will die due to irreversible hypothermia. resuscitation is not possible. So this is being put hypothermic stages, that is stage 1 to stage 5, by International Commission for Mountaineering, and that gives emergency medicine hypothermia scale. So this is one of the very good slide. Do follow that. Now if we go through a etiology, already we have told you that we divide into two groups by two different sets. Either we call as primary and secondary, or we call unintentional and intentional. Unintentional usually we call as an accidental, where the person is exposed to extreme cold environment, and usually in secondary it is secondary to some metabolic disorders or hypothalamic disorders, CNS dysfunction, or drug induced, or maybe secondary to sepsis, or say like skin disorders like scleroderma, acute illness, or it is also labeled as acute incapacitating illnesses, and iatrogenic fluid resuscitation. These are all you can put into what we call as a secondary groups. This will be all secondary group. Well, this environmental exposure with normal thermoregulatory center of the body, you label that as primary. Say this person is having primary. Here, this is also accidental, primary. This is also accidental, primary. But if a person develops sepsis and he develops hypothermia, it is secondary. So accidental environmental exposure is usually primary, while metabolic disorders, CNS causes, drug, sepsis, skin condition, etc. This will be all in secondary groups. Some of the metabolic disorders, hypoglycemia, hypothyroidism, hypoadrenalism, hypopituitarism. You can see all are hypo. So hypoglycemia, I am repeating again, hypoglycemia, hypothyroidism, hypoadrenalism, and hypopituitarism. All this can end up with what we call as hypothermia. As far as CNS condition is concerned, severe brain injury, or we call head injury, occasionally tumor, stroke, and one case encephalopathy. Out of this comes topmost on the list. And particularly if there is a damage to thermoregulatory center. Among drugs, ethanol comes topmost on the list because it will produce peripheral vasodilatation and person will lose lot amount of heat. Occasionally sedatives and hypnotics can also lead to what we call as secondary hypothermia. Sepsis comes the most common cause after metabolic disorders. Then comes skin disorders like extensive burns, exfoliative dermatitis, and you can put even a scleroderma. Once in a while, acute incapacitating illnesses, massive fluid or blood resuscitation can end up with hypothermia. This is usually iatrogenic. And another condition where the person has got severe malnutrition can also end up with secondary hypothermia. These are all accidental causes. By and large, accidental causes will be mainly in the form of environmental exposures. And this all will be what we call as secondary groups. No doubt they are unintentional, but these are secondary groups. We already mentioned in detail like drugs, skin, endocrine disorders, sepsis, trauma, massive volume resuscitation either by IV fluids or blood, or cold fluid infusion, etc. Now by and large we go for intentional hypothermia by external cooling device in the person who has developed a hyperthermia, intravascular cooling device, cardiopulmonary bypass, neuroprotection after cardiac arrest. In a person who has got a raised intracranial pressure, one of the treatment is induction of a hypothermia. And also in a person who is undergoing a major surgery for brain or major surgery for heart, lungs, etc. to prevent a brain damage. In that particular, you can induce hypothermia. These are called therapeutic indications, or we call intentional hypothermia or induced hypothermia. So therapeutic hypothermia is very frequently done for post cardiac arrest, in hospital cardiac arrest, severe head injury, severe ischemic stroke, perinatal asphyxia, major cardiac surgery, major neurosurgery, or say person is doing a major surgery on a big vessels like aorta or thoracic aorta, abdominal aneurysm, etc., where you want to preserve brain and surgery is lasting for a long period. This is called therapeutic hypothermia or induced hypothermia or intentional hypothermia. By and large, in this induced hypothermia, you use surface cooling techniques, or you use lavage, or you use IV infusion, or you use cardiopulmonary bypass. By this, you reduce the body temperature below 95 degree Fahrenheit, and in some condition it is further lowered. But during that particular, you have to take precaution regarding complication because of hypothermia. So these are some of the technology. This is endovascular temperature therapies treatment system, where you got an advanced heat exchange technology, and these are the different technology which are being used by catheter. You put a catheter inside, and these are different types of instruments which can reduce your body temperature to even 33.5 degree centigrade, which will be less than even we call 95 degree Fahrenheit. This is another technique by which you can induce hypothermia by flexible catheter put via the femoral vein into inferior vena cava, and you try to induce hypothermia. This is also utilized as a treatment for hypothermia. These are external pads you can utilize for induction of hypothermia, for treatment of hypothermia, or also you can utilize to induce hypothermia in a person who are undergoing a brain surgery, etc. So indirectly, hypothermia is because of exposure to extreme low temperature, or person has consumed large quantity of alcohol and he is exposed to extreme cold, or person has not got a proper clothing to prevent heat transmission by radiation or by conduction, or he gets a traumatic injury, particularly traumatic brain injury, or he dives into a ice cold water, or he is doing a swimming in a ice cold water. And there are a lot of other causes, like if a person has got exposure to a time where there is a cold wave, or he has consumed alcohol, hypothyroidism, or person has got injury, or person is exposed to extreme cold without proper clothing. Also, person who performs the outdoor sports such as skiing or mountain climbing, particularly in a cold atmosphere, and patient who had a major surgery, or person who has undergone a massive blood transfusion or a massive IV fluid, this can also produce hypothermia. This will be iatrogenic. Elderly person are more prone to, because they are more fragile, they got low body fat content, and they are prone to worst outcome if they have a cardiac history. So these are all the causes what can be there for hypothermia. By and large, it is very common because of increased heat loss, like vasodilatation by alcohol, sepsis or toxins, or because of extensive burns or skin disorders like extensive dermatitis, or person is given IV fluids or blood transfusion. In all this condition, you can have hypothermia. If there is a decreased heat production, like metabolic disorders, acute illnesses, diabetic ketoacidosis, hypoglycemia, myxedema coma, hypoadrenalism, hypopituitarism. In that condition, you can have decreased heat production. Also, there will be decreased shivering, hypothyroid, hypoadrenal, malnutrition, and hypoglycemia. There will be decreased heat production, so this will be another mechanism by which you can develop hypothermia. And impaired thermoregulation will occur very frequently. The most common causes being sepsis, severe cerebrovascular stroke, even we call as a intracranial hemorrhage, multiple sclerosis, autonomic dysfunctions. Also, you can have a heat regulation being impaired in cirrhosis, end-stage renal disease, spinal cord injury, severe peripheral neuropathy, etc. can also give rise to impaired thermoregulation. Indirectly, this is a part of what we call as thermoregulation and pathophysiology, which can end up with hypothermia. So as far as thermoregulation is concerned, you require a control mechanism which can be done by hypothalamus and peripheral thermoreceptors. In some of the condition, peripheral thermoreceptors are being damaged. Hence, you do not get a proper input to hypothalamus. Say like extensive burns, dermatitis, we have put here. Extensive burn, dermatitis, peripheral neuropathy, spinal cord injury, even cirrhosis, CKD, etc. You will have an impaired input to the hypothalamus. And whenever the hypothalamus is damaged, like head injury, or you have got impaired imbalance because of stress hormone is not being produced, like in case of hypothyroidism, hypoadrenalism, and even hypopituitarism. It can be further aggravated by malnutrition and hypoglycemia because you need energy to produce heat, and glucose is the source of energy by aerobic metabolism. So these are all the mechanisms by which you can have a thermoregulation being impaired and person can be exposed to extreme cold and can go into hypothermia. These are the mechanisms by which you can have thermoregulation like sweating, vasodilatation. You have got heat preservation by vasoconstriction, heat production by shivering, and heat preservation by non-shivering. And this is done by skin, deep tissue, spinal cord, and brain. These are the tissue, or these are the center which will take part in heat regulation. So whenever a person is exposed to extreme cold, skin thermoreceptors will get stimulated. Blood temperature will stimulate preoptic anterior hypothalamus. Spinothalamic tract will also stimulate anterior hypothalamus. And you can have a direct reflex vasoconstriction because of exposure to extreme cold. That is a direct reflex arc which takes part, and that will produce vasoconstriction. Because of all this, you will have a heat protection. You will require a heat preservation, and there will be compensatory mechanism by heat production. So heat production will be increased by shivering, where you will get a muscle contraction, and you will have a heat production. You will have an endocrine system which will release certain hormones like thyroid, catecholamines, etc. And that will help in increase heat production, we call as stress hormones. You will have an autonomic nervous system which will be acting immediately, that is sympathetic system and parasympathetic system. Because of acting on an autonomic nervous system, you will have a peripheral vasoconstriction. You will have shivering. This too will be the first thing what will be there. Person will be acquiring a typical posture, that is, he will acquire a closed posture, or we call as knee chest position, and to prevent heat loss. There will be also extrapyramidal system which will stimulate the skeletal muscle. and you will have adaptive behavioral response. All this will try to preserve heat. So this is a hypothalamic center. This is sympathetic system. So whenever a person gets a decreased temperature, either because of decreased heat production or because of exposed to extreme heat outside, that is we call exposed to extreme cold, the skin cold receptor will get stimulated. It will stimulate two centers, that is one directly cerebral cortex and second hypothalamus. As soon as the hypothalamus is stimulated, hypothalamus will stimulate the sympathetic system, and this sympathetic system will give rise to increase in BMR via adrenaline, noradrenaline. Noradrenaline will produce vasoconstriction. Adrenaline will increase the basal metabolism, as well as it will give rise to even shivering. You will have a pillow erections. You will have another way of stimulation is endocrine hormone, that is thyroid hormone, which will increase basal metabolism by action of T3. You will have an increased shivering, which can be partially because of sympathetic system. Person will acquire a knee chest position of curling up, by which also you will have a preservation of heat. At the same time, there will be decreased blood temperature by different mechanisms. You will have a cerebral cortex which will produce, a person will immediately wear the clothings which will prevent the heat loss by radiation or conduction. Person will do a little amount of muscular exercise, by which there will be increased heat production because of the muscle activity. Person will start eating hot foods, by which the energy will be provided as well as the body temperature will be elevated, and person will go to a source where you can get heat transmission by means of radiation. This will be all the different mechanism person will try to do and try to elevate the body temperature close to normal. So this will be the different mechanism which will be taking part in heat regulations. So there will be three response once the person is exposed to heat: cerebral cortex stimulation, decreasing in a blood temperature. There will be voluntary response. Even hypothalamus will start getting a response, and hypothalamus will have an effect on sympathetic system, endocrine system, and will produce shivering, and also the person will acquire a curling up posture, and voluntarily also the person will acquire a curling up posture, and this will be because of cerebral cortex. If person becomes unconscious, nothing of this a person can do. So these are all what we call as thermoregulation. These are the things what will happen during early phase, this will happen during late phase, and this will happen when you thaw. During early phase, there will be circulatory effects of cold, and during that circulatory effect of cold, you will have a damage to the cell, you will have a water will leave the cell, you will have an electrolyte imbalance, and you will have a modification of the protein in a cell wall, and indirectly it will lead to cell damage. In a late stage, extracellular and intracellular water imbalance will take place, and you will have a crystallization of water. And once there is a crystallization of water, cell dysfunction will take place and cell will die. And we have already mentioned all this mechanism, that is what we call the systemic effect of a cold in a previous chapter, and that will be because of that particular effect, the person will have a cognitive dysfunction, delirium, aphasia, amnesia, and person can even become unconscious. To compensate, because of increased sympathetic activity, person will have elevated blood pressure, tachycardia. So it will try to maintain the perfusion. Small intestine will have decreased peristalsis and you can get paralytic ileus. As far as bladder is concerned, you can have atony and you can have a retention of urine. Muscle will undergo shivering, contraction to increase the heat production. You will have a severe peripheral vasoconstriction that will give rise to stasis, and secondary to stasis you will have a hemoconcentration, thrombosis, lactic acid acidosis, vascular insufficiency, and it can end up with even gangrene. And you can have a skin changes like bulla formation and interstitial edema. Because of severe shivering, you can have even a rhabdomyolysis. There will be even a peripheral neuropathy. The nerve function will be affected. You will have a cold diuresis, and person can even end up with what we call as an AKI. As far as lung is concerned, you will have a ventilatory coefficient mismatch, and that can lead to hypoxia. Because of direct effect on the heart, because of hypothermia, you will have a Osborne wave, or we call J wave appearance, decreased contractility, bradycardia, and person can even develop ventricular fibrillation, and severe cardiac arrhythmia where person can even have sudden cardiac death. While you are rewarming, there will be increased extracellular fluid, and secondary to increased extracellular fluid, you will have a formation of extracellular fluid in the form of bulla formation. So while doing a thaw, you should keep it in mind, or what we call as a during rewarming, you should keep a watch that while rewarming, you will develop a skin changes. This should not happen. So rewarming should be done gradually and should not produce any specific complications. What is frostbite? In a frostbite, there is a crystallization of extracellular as well as intracellular water that will give rise to lysis of cell membrane, inflammatory response, stasis and coagulation, and at the end stage you will have a ischemia and necrosis of the tissue, and this is a permanent damage to the cell. So frostbite will have irreversible damage to the cell. Now if we go through, that was the pathophysiology. If we go through the clinical features, you can divide into mild, moderate and severe depending upon the etiology, primary and secondary, accidental and intentional. We are not going to talk regarding intentional, we are going to talk of accidental only, and in that accidental it can be primary or secondary, and in this primary also it can be non-freezing cold injury or a freezing cold injury, and in secondary depending upon the different disorders you can have severity that is mild, moderate and severe. So we'll be putting all this together and trying to explain what can happen. You can see this is a severe injury which is taking place. This is less likely to be intentional, this is more likely to be accidental. This can be because of primary or secondary, and this will be more because of the freezing cold injury rather than a non-freezing cold injury. So we'll be discussing that particular part. So we have said that if the body temperature goes below 95, now you will start developing symptom signs of hypothermia. So you will have different phases of reaction to the cold challenge. One is cold response, then you go to the stage we call as a mild hypothermia and severe hypothermia. Initially, symptoms of hypothermia depends upon the severity. So you start getting shivering. There will be blushed lips and extremities, altered mental status due to decreased CNS electrical activity. The person will have a confusion, poor cognitive functions, poor judgment, etc. And when it becomes very severe, person can be unconscious. In short, if we just take into mild, moderate and severe, combining all together, during a mild stage, this is mentioned in centigrade, This is mentioned in centigrade. In a very, very early stage, that is a cold response, you will have a tachycardia, tachypnea and arrhythmias. Sorry, dysarthria. That is because of shivering. So tachycardia, tachypnea and dysarthria because of shivering. But when it becomes moderate, now shivering becomes less. You will start developing effect on heart in the form of arrhythmias, and you will have an altered level of consciousness. And when it becomes very severe and it goes to below 28 degrees centigrade, now person will be unconscious. On an ECG you will see Osborn waves, J wave elevation, and person can even have cardiac arrhythmia, asystole, ventricular fibrillation. And as far as respiration is concerned, person can have apnea and person can go to a complete flaccidity. These are in short description. So there is another way to explain. In a mild variety, there is tachycardia, tachypnea. So they say mumbles, grumbles, stumbles, fumbles, tumbles, plus shivering. That is very characteristic of a mild variety. In a moderate variety, now heart rate falls, cardiac output falls, and you start developing arrhythmias. As well as over the CNS, decreased level of consciousness, ataxia and shivering. This will happen if the body temperature falls between 85 to 90. This is between 90 to 95. And when it goes below 82, person will have a deep coma, heart rate will markedly reduce, you will start developing even asystole or ventricular fibrillation and asystole, and person can have a irreversible damage to myocardium and also brain. This is a very easy way to understand mild, moderate and severe, irrespective of whether it is accidental, primary or secondary, and if it is non-freezing injury or a freezing injury, the little symptoms will be different. We'll be showing you that. But if it is accidental, whether it is primary or secondary, will depend upon mild, moderate and severe clinical features. So this is a classical ECG which shows you a J point elevation, and here you can see this is a classical Osborn wave, and once you get this Osborn wave, it is called as a J wave or a Osborn wave. The person is more prone to get a severe cardiac arrhythmia like ventricular fibrillation or cardiac arrest, and this person should be treated as early as possible. This is another way to explain the entire mild, moderate and severe. What is the effect on CNS? What is the effect on cardiovascular system, respiratory system, kidney and neuromuscular system? At your leisure time, you can go in detail. What we have mentioned before is in a shortcut. So if you want to know all this in detail, you can go at your leisure time. I put this slide specifically for that purpose. Whoever are interested can go through what will happen in a mild variety in a CNS, cardiovascular, respiratory, renal and neuromuscular. In those we have mentioned some of the important finding only, previous slides. So you can see here, in a mild person will develop, as far as early stage is concerned, tachycardia, tachypnea. This should be here. This should be here. Sorry. So tachycardia, tachypnea and shivering. This will be the three cardinal features. And as far as a CNS is concerned, person will have a little dysarthria, little impairment of the cognitive functions. While in a moderate variety, now person will have an altered level of consciousness. Person will start developing decrease in the heart rate. So bradycardia, Osborn wave. Person will have a hypoventilation. Will have a cold diuresis in an early phase, and here the renal autoregulation will be intact, but the renal blood flow will reduce, and neuromuscular wise the shivering will stop. So shivering will reduce, and in a severe variety deeply unconscious, progressive fall, hypotension, shock stage, and person can even go into severe cardiac arrhythmia like ventricular fibrillation and asystole. And here the person will develop what we call as apnea. As far as renal is concerned, AKI. And as far as the neuromuscular junction is concerned, the person will have a decreased nerve conduction and there will be peripheral areflexia. Muscle will stop contracting. This will be in short, you can go through. So you've got an induction phase, maintenance phase and rewarming phase. So whatever we have mentioned before, this is early, this is maintenance phase, and this is a rewarming phase. There is something called as a non-freezing cold injury. What do you mean by non-freezing cold injury? Injury to the soft tissue of the extremities that results from a prolonged cooling or constant exposure to, most important, wet condition or the damp condition. Means there is a little humidity or moisture which is present in an environment. Then we call that as a non-freezing cold injury. Here, peripheral nerves are most susceptible to the cold related injury, and because of that you start developing severe peripheral vasoconstriction, and immediately after this particular person will demonstrate certain clinical findings which can remain, and you will have a damage that can be there even up to 18 months of post exposure. Now in a non-freezing injury you can have two varieties. We call wet injury and dry injury. Wet injury will give rise to a condition which is labeled as trench foot, and dry injury is called pernio or chilblains. This is prolonged exposure to temperature between 32 to 60 degree Fahrenheit for few hours or 3 to 4 days. What will be the finding? You will have a swollen limbs, extremities, edematous, numb foot, initially red and then becomes pale and then later on cyanotic. There will be increased sensitivity to pain and infections. This is typically described as trench foot. Now here in pernio or chilblains, when it is exposed to 60 degree Fahrenheit, it is exposed to dry environment. Because of dry, there is a erythematous skin. It is tender, little swollen, itchy, and there are painful papules. This will be the typical finding, while here it is edematous, it is red, then it becomes pale, and then you get cyanosis. While this is erythematous, tender, swollen, and you have got little painful, itchy papules. And after rewarming, there is inflammation, redness, and hot to touch for hours. This is the difference between wet and dry variety of non-freezing cold injury. This is typical of wet. This is typical of dry. You can see a small involvement, while rest of the foot is little better. And then when it is severe, you can see that skin peels off. Skin peels off. This non-freezing injury can be transient or for late. Early stage you get a hyperhidrosis, hyperesthesia, or even anesthesia of digits, joint swelling. There is a decreased range of movements. There is edema. Fat pad is lost. There is a transient muscular atrophy. Pain is because of injury to the peripheral nerves or small vessels as a result of ischemia. And in a late stage, hyperesthesia of a distal digits, increased sensitivity to heat and cold, nail bed gets deformed, There is a hyperhidrosis, or there can be hypohidrosis or anhidrosis. There is a decrease in the proprioceptive sensation. The pain sensation is increased. There is a loss of fibrocartilage in ear, and there may be avascular necrosis, and even then can be damage to the growth plate in the joints. These are all the different things which can happen in an exposed extremities. This is typical chilblains, which is secondary to we call as a freezing cold injury. Mild but discomfortable inflammatory reasons. It is because of long intermittent exposure to the damp and non-freezing ambient temperature. Sorry, so this will be non-freezing. Yes, this will be non-freezing, not freezing. This is pernio or chilblains. This is, you can see here, this is called cold paniculitis. This is because of exposure to freezing cold injury, and that will give rise to mild necrosis of subcutaneous fat, and it is very commonly seen in children. It is also called as popsicles. Usually it does not require any specific treatment. There is one very common injury which can happen is a trench foot, because of immersion of foot in ice cold water, and that develops slowly over hours or days when the foot is exposed to the cold or wet conditions. It is a reversible injury and may progress to irreversible stage. You can see the changes what takes place in the skin because of exposure to cold water or immersed foot, or we call trench foot. These are freezing cold injury. You can see a blister formation, and you can end up with even a gangrene. This is gangrene, what has happened because of exposure to freezing cold injury. So you can divide first degree damage is frost nip, and when it is severe it is called frostbite. Frostbite. If you are interested, you can go in detail. These are all the different changes what can happen in an early stage, and these are in little further advanced stage. This is second degree changes. You can see here these are the blisters which appears, and these are all second degree. These are all second degree changes we call frostbite, and in a third degree you will start getting gangrenous changes. Gangrenous changes. So you will start getting gangrenous changes in a third degree. These are those typical changes. Gangrenous changes. Now what investigation you will ask for? First is any history, environmental exposures, past medical history, or at present if he is taking any medication which can interfere with thermoregulation. Complete examination is absolutely necessary to find out the severity of damage, involvement of different vital organs like heart, brain, lung, kidney, liver, etc. Rectal temperature should be taken, or esophageal temperature should be taken. Head to toe secondary examination should be done after a complete vital examination like pulse, blood pressure, temperature and respiration. Neuro examination is absolutely necessary. Cardiovascular examination is also necessary. You should examine the extremities, nose, ear and all peripheral arteries. As far as laboratory is concerned, EKG is a must. You should put them on a cardiac monitor because they are very much prone to cardiac arrhythmias, and person can have ventricular fibrillation and sudden cardiac death. ABG is necessary to find out the oxygenation, carbon dioxide, pH, etc. Electrolytes imbalance is a very common in case of a cold injury. CBC because there is also effect on a blood parameters. Urine analysis because there is a damage to kidney because of the perfusion. Liver is damaged, so liver function test, PT and INR. Because of muscle damage, CPK will give you an answer regarding a rhabdomyolysis. These are all the investigation which you require, and they should be done to find out the severity of the damage and the complication because of code injury. How you manage? We already mentioned what you do in investigations. Best way of taking a temperature is a esophageal thermometers. You go for all investigation like CBC, electrolyte, renal function test, liver function test, CPK, troponin, etc., ECG, all those things should be done. First is maintain respiration and circulation. Handle the patient gently. We always call ABCD. You should start with passive rewarming immediately, and if required, advanced cardiac life support should be given. Specific treatment for hypothermia, like recognizing that it is hypothermia, remove from nasty conditions, remove wet clothes, handle with care, and insulate the person and start warming up. Most important is warming up. And during warming up, you should see that person do not develop a complication. So before starting a warming up, Doppler study should be done for pulse. Protect the part. No friction massage should be done. Stabilize the core temperature. Address the medical and surgical conditions, whatever are the complications or whatever are the predisposing factor. Person should be rehydrated. Prevent partial thaw and refreeze. Refreezing will cause even further damage, and mild moderate will become a severe stage. When you start warming, rewarming we call, analgesic may be utilized because person will have a severe pain. You can use drugs which blocks the prostaglandins and thromboxane like ibuprofen. Aspirin should be avoided. Rapid rewarming of a core therapy. Whenever you start a rapid rewarming, you should always keep it in mind. You can produce a damage and complications of rewarming. Usually you start with an extremities. We have shown you some of the induction hypothermia. Same can be utilized for rewarming. Instead of cold, you increase the temperature. On the face, you can apply a motion compression soaked in warm water, and that can be one of the mechanism by which you can increase. Once you have done a rewarming, tetanus toxoid should be given as a prophylaxis. Apply a topical aloe vera cream. The affected digits should be separated with a sterile material like dry gauze, etc. Dry, elevate, and splint can be utilized. Blister should be removed. Some people say remove, some people say it is controversial. Consider the drainage of a non-hemorrhagic bulla that interferes with movements. Never debride a hemorrhagic bulla. These are some of the small precautions which you should take. Hydrotherapy should be done. Common infection is a streptococcal and staphylococci. So you should start prophylactic treatment for streptococcal infection. Intra-arterial TPA will reduce the digital amputation rate and will prevent necrosis and what we call as gangrene. Phenoxybenzamine is to reduce the vasospasm. Surgery should be done to reduce compartment syndromes or compartment pressure. If required, then only you should go for amputations. And if there is a full demarcation, then you may wait for a while. Usually, mild hypothermia can be managed at home. Moderate hypothermia will require admission to ICU, and severe will definitely require an emergency care in ICU, and there will be a risk of multi-organ failure. And severe hypothermia with lethal injury will require a palliation simultaneously along with ICU treatment. So there are some algorithms which you can follow in hypothermia. This is one of the algorithm which is being there. At your leisure time you can go through what you do in a mild hypothermia, what you do in a moderate, and what you do in a severe variety. And this is what you do in induction and what you order, given in detail. At your leisure time you can go through a very simple way, simplified way. In a mild cases, remove the wet clothes and use the blankets. Very easy. By and large, we call external rewarming will be enough. In a severe cases, warming blanket will not be suffice. You might require an internal warming. So external warming plus internal warming. And as far as the internal warming is concerned, IV fluids, GI lavage, peritoneal or pleural lavage, these are all what we call as traumatic or invasive procedures. While GI lavage is almost we can consider as non-invasive, but these are all invasive. IV fluids, GI lavage, peritoneal lavage, you have to puncture. In pleural lavage also you have to do a puncture, and inhalation rewarming. These are all the different technology which are being utilized. So these are all rewarming procedures. And how you do it? You remove the wet clothings, provide a dry insulation, warm airway humidity, and warm IV fluids. This is for all. This is for almost all. If it is mild one, active external rewarming is very good. As far as moderate is concerned, active external rewarming plus during that particular you should keep a watch on heating methods so that you don't create burns. In a severe variety you can go for pleural lavage or forced air rewarming, and in a very late stage extracorporeal rewarming can be also utilized. You can utilize whatever algorithm you are following. So these are the methods of external rewarming, like warm blankets, immersion in warming solution, broke back hug, etc. This is that particular procedure. In a mild variety, passive external rewarming is also helpful. So it is called passive external rewarming, or short form it is called PER. Blankets, warm environment, and IV fluids or oral fluids, hot fluids. That is called passive external rewarming. But while giving an IV fluids, you should keep a watch on volume overload. These are external rewarming, different materials which are being available. They are called as a hypothermia wraps. In a active external rewarming, you can use invasive procedures, and in invasive procedures you can utilize, these are the common which are utilized in an external rewarming, that is humid air inhalation, IV fluids, external warm packs. But when you start using a peritoneal lavage, gallbladder, colonic irrigations, then thoracic, pleural lavage, extracorporeal rewarming or hemodialysis, etc. These are all invasive procedures. These are active core rewarming followed by invasive procedures, and these are usually utilized in moderate to severe and very severe groups. It is also called as an active external rewarming followed by active internal rewarmings. So you can rewarm by pleural, bladder, cardiopulmonary or we call ECMO, dialysis. You can utilize even bypass or peritoneal dialysis. These are all invasive procedures and traumatic procedures. These are all internal rewarming. Internal rewarmings. In conclusion, hypothermia is rare but treatable. Good outcome after prolonged arrest also. It includes hypothermia in your diagnosis. It is also included as a fifth vital signs, body temperature. Early recognition, if available, if patient is in a cardiac arrest. Prevention is still better or we consider the best, and don't end up with complications. There are some acute complications because of severe shivering, rhabdomyolysis, acute tubular necrosis, electrolyte imbalance, particularly acidosis. You can get hyperkalemia, and when kidney gets involved, you can have lot of other electrolyte imbalance also. Core temperature after a drop, compartment syndrome can occur secondary to muscle injury. As far as a chronic damage is concerned, nerve damage, which can produce a nerve pain, dysesthesia, hyperesthesia, thermal sensitivity may be lost, autonomic dysfunctions may produce hyperhidrosis, Raynaud's phenomena. You can have a musculoskeletal injury, you can have a muscle atrophy, tenosynovitis, strictures, osteoarthritis. As far as skin is concerned, edema, ulcer, very rarely delayed cancer. Some of the known complications during different stages, particularly in a moderate to severe cardiac arrhythmia, thromboembolism, rhabdomyolysis, ending up with an acute kidney injury, DIC, very rare pancreatitis. You can have, during therapeutic hypothermia, you can have cardiac arrhythmias, pneumonia, sepsis, bleeding disorders, local cold injury, rebound hypothermia. So these are some of the complications in a therapeutic hypothermia. And while you are inducing and when you are bringing back the normal temperature, you should keep it in mind all these complications secondary to therapeutic hypothermia, or we call intentional hypothermia or induced hypothermia. This is a complication of cooling. You can have a hypovolemia, coagulopathy, thrombocytopenia, electrolyte imbalance secondary to hypothermia induced like potassium, magnesium and calcium imbalance, insulin resistance, and you can have altered clearance of certain drugs like fentanyl, midazolam, etc. While rewarming, that is thaw, you can have worsening of cerebral edema, electrolyte imbalance, particularly hyperkalemia, and you can have induced fever or we call induced hypothermia. Do keep it in mind when you are doing a rewarming procedures. You can have after drop, rewarming shock, and even we call rewarming acidosis. That can happen while you are rewarming or when you are doing thaw. So I end my lecture here. Once in a while you might see some person, particularly the person who is staying in a northern region. So you can see sometime a person with hypothermia. I hope this lecture will be helpful to you. Once in a while it can be asked in your oral or in your theory exams, and it may be helpful to you occasionally if you see some patient with a low body temperature. So I thank you all for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. So I end my lecture here. If you like this lecture, please press button like, subscribe and share with your friends. We'll meet you in a next lecture.